From the NewsChannel 5 network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm NewsChannel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. The August 2nd primary election is now less than a week away. It's been another rough and tumble campaign season here in Tennessee, especially the last 3 to 4 weeks in the Republican gubernatorial primary. What's happened to civility in our politics? And is there a way our political and social discourse can be improved? One of those working hard in that regard to make things better is our guest on Inside Politics this week. He's David Plazas. He's the Director of Opinion and Engagement for the USA Today Network Tennessee, here, and also for the Tennessean here in Nashville. David, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you, Pat. It's a pleasure to be here.
So what's happened to civility in our politics, and for that matter, in our general social discourse publicly?
Sure, we've definitely seen since November 2016 this tremendous lack of civility, if you call it, and people have been in their own echo chambers. They've been unfriending people on Facebook. They've been screaming at each other. We saw the case recently at the Red Hen where Sarah Huckabee Sanders was kicked out of the restaurant. But I will tell you that there is a desire, in my experience, for people to want to fix that, want to talk to each other again, because at the end of the day, we're Americans. And earlier this year, we started a campaign called Civility Tennessee to try to address that and really talk about what civility is, which is not about fake niceness, it's not about courtesy for courtesy's sake, but it's taking on issues in a way that's respectful.
But you turn on the TV, you see these attack ads coming from almost all the candidates in the Republican primary. If the candidates are not going to behave, why should voters behave? Why should they feel like they should behave?
Well, I mean, I think ultimately the people who should be role models in our life are not necessarily the politicians. They're people who are the pillars of our community. And
that's not the politicians?
Well,
shouldn't it be?
I would hope so. I would hope so. But hopefully, too, you know, your parents, your teachers. And one of the things I can tell you is that I've seen efforts by people across academia, even high schools, that are really working hard to teach these this philosophy of speaking to each other with respect, regardless of your political viewpoint. And I think that's important. We need to have that reset because, again, it's not about fakeness. It's about really addressing issues respectfully.
But the real problem these days is that people live in almost different universes and they don't even agree on the facts that are involved. So it's difficult to have a conversation, much less come to any kind of consensus, even over a long period of time, if you don't agree on what the facts are, or at least some of the facts.
I agree with you, and people like you and me in media organizations have a responsibility to help people understand what those facts are, even in the wake of distrust. I was in McMinnville recently and talked to a Rotary group that had asked me that question, why should we trust you? And actually it was a wonderful opportunity to talk about some of the efforts we're doing to really get into other communities that maybe didn't vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump and really start those conversations. That engagement, that personal engagement is really important because it's easy to bash someone on social media you don't know. It's much harder to have that conversation over a meal, over fried chicken or cherry pie.
But the reason that candidates do attack ads is that they think they work. If they feel like somebody's moving on them, about to pass them, they think by attacking them they'll go, and it does seem to work in the polling.
There is research that shows that negative ad is effective at differentiating candidates. The question is it healthy for our society? I would say no.
Now, one thing that has not happened so far, but may well happen in the November election, is we haven't had the outside groups come in with their own ads, and in a lot of cases, those ads may be done by groups that nobody has any idea. They do not disclose who their funders are, and that's all this stuff is protected by the First Amendment, but it's a little scary when there's ads on TV or things coming to your mailbox that you don't know who sent it to you.
That's absolutely true, and it's one of the consequences of Citizens United from several years ago, which basically allowed this unfettered free speech through campaign donations. The hope of Citizens United was that there would be more transparency. Unfortunately, that hasn't come to pass.
Now, when you look back, though, in the 1820s, 1830s, back in Andrew Jackson's day, Henry Clay's days, I mean, there were newspapers actually set up to be vehicles for campaigns, and the stuff that they talked about and charged each other back then was not beanbag. I mean, they went after each other even harder than today. So are things really worse today than they have been before, and why?
Well, we have a much more saturated media environment, and remember back then the literacy rate was far lower. You had far fewer educated people who were involved in the political process.
African Americans couldn't vote, women couldn't vote.
And so today you have a large swath of people, and you've got social media that has taken on messages, plus we have the reality of Russian meddling and other meddling into our elections through ads that confuse us in many cases.
You believe the Russian meddling will continue in 2018, and will it change, or will it be more effective?
Well, that's what our intelligence agencies say, and certainly our elected officials, our senators, Senator Corker, Senator Alexander, they've certainly told us that we should be trusting those assessments.
You mentioned Civility Tennessee. Give me a sort of a real-life example of how you help people know what to do when they come out of your meeting to have a political conversation with somebody who they know they don't agree with, and they don't agree with them?
Sure, no, thank you. It's a year-long campaign with a series of events and columns to talk about issues that are tough. We've taken on issues such as racism, gun violence, issues such as sexual assault. We bring in guests to do Facebook Live videos on social media, and we also do physical events. We actually have one coming up on August 27th on voting, voter engagement, because we are 50th in turnout. Tennessee is 50th in turnout, and we really have to have a conversation about how do we turn that around. And so the idea is to come out understanding what are the facts, what's the data, and how do we do something about it.
Where's the event going to be held?
The event's going to be held at Lipscomb University's main campus in Green Hills from 6 to 8 p.m., and people can get tickets at event.tennessean.com.
What do you talk to people about in terms of packing a lot of patience? I suspect, and understanding that we are such an instant society. We expect we're going to do this and bang, we're going to get instant results. It's all going to be resolved, and we can move on like it's a reality TV show. And Civility is not a reality TV show.
It's not. I was at Hume-Fogg Magnet High School earlier this week and saw how a school librarian is helping teach high school students to do this. And you have to have some ground rules. And one of those ground rules has to be listening. And one of them has to be respect. That is, listen to the point that's being made. Don't attack the person. Criticize the idea and have a discussion like that. And we look at our own founding fathers. What made this country possible? Compromise. Compromise is not a four-letter word. It really is something that can get us through some tough issues, and we don't have to agree. We can continue to fight for things. We can continue to protest. This is part of our First Amendment. We can continue to be direct and demand better of our leaders, but we don't have to come to fisticuffs.
This always comes up as people approach the holiday season. I know they're going to get together with people that are relatives of theirs, but they know they don't have agreements on politics. Are you going to be able to help people be able to get through the holiday season without having that kind of conversation that they dread, or if they do, they can make something at least halfway positive out of it?
Well, I'm very excited that you asked, because the soft launch for Civility Tennessee was right before Thanksgiving of 2017, and it was the first Thanksgiving of the Trump administration, and I started asking readers, what are you going to say at the dinner table on Thanksgiving? And I received dozens of letters that we published and talked about this on a radio show, and people had some great ideas, and ultimately they said, I am responsible for civility. I myself am responsible for creating that environment. What can we do about it? So there's an issue of personal responsibility, and there's this issue of holding our leaders accountable as well, to say you have a responsibility to also lead through character.
David Plazas is our guest. He's the Director of Engagement and Opinion for the USA Today Network Tennessee, here for the Tennessean as well. Back to continue our conversation after this break.